Hey everyone, this is Chris and welcome to Unwanted Tutorials. Unwanted Tutorials is a loose collection of how-to, hands-on, decidedly irreverent videos in which I aim to enable you to create engaging content using DCS's hellish creation tools. Today we'll look at assigning routes to air groups. Before we do though, please allow me to ramble a bit as I know that I'm about to blow my stack. To be clear, I'm a fan of DCS and I want DCS to thrive. Its current decline is worrying me and I'm dimly aware that my complaints aren't helping. DCS's customers are, like me, mainly aviation enthusiasts. DCS is a really good cockpit simulator. As a licensed pilot, I love learning new cockpits and DCS scratches that itch. But once you learn a cockpit, there's very little else to do in DCS. It has no content. A mile wide, an inch deep, as they say. Outside the cockpit, the story is dire. DCS is a below average flight sim and downright terrible game. In school I once learned that a couple of centuries ago the fortunes of a village was often tied to the abilities of their toolsmith. While a good toolsmith didn't guarantee prosperity, having access to only bad tools severely limited the fortunes of all resident artisans. DCS has great potential, but the abysmal quality of the tools that we have is choking the game. Eagle Dynamics don't invest into game design, and so it fails as a game. I want to change this, hence these videos. Working on this script again drove home just how crappy and shoddy everything in DCS outside the cockpit itself is. To create content, Mission Editor is the only tool available and it's crap. How do I know? I've spent almost 10k hours in DCS, a good half of them designing missions, some of which I share with the community. And the experience creating, sharing and maintaining missions is appalling. And yes, I again realize that this isn't helping, since after all I intend to convince you to get into mission creation yourself. I'm under no illusions that ED watched this video. My experience with them is that they claim to listen, but never do. Still, DCS is in decline, and we need better tools to create better content. ED have been talking about dynamic campaigns for well over a decade now, and I fear that they deliver something on the same catastrophic quality level as Mission Editor, Quick Action Generator, Data Cartridge or Save State. Eagle Dynamics team can't design their way out of a wet paper bag, and I'm terrified of what abomination they may deliver with Dynamic Campaign. Because if it is bolted onto Mission Editor or the rest of DCS's existing toolchain, it's going to be crap. Another nail in the coffin. So, no matter how trashy their product, no matter how eye-watering my comments on Mission Editor may be, let's try and help averting DCS's demise by creating great content. I'll try and keep my anger and frustration in check. Yet, since I've created many missions, this reopens many wounds and lays bare just how obviously bottom shelf the game designers are. So, after getting into the mood, let's assign a route to an aircraft group. We start by choosing either the helicopter or aircraft symbol on the left. I click the aircraft, and then choosing combined joint for country on the right. A quick reminder. We choose combined joint simply so we can access any aircraft, because internally, Mission Editor uses a number of brain-dead, completely undocumented and counterintuitive filters that remove access to aircraft for reasons no sane person would understand. Combined joint deactivates some of these filters and gives you access to most aircraft. I'm choosing the Su-25T Frogfoot, an aircraft that is available to everyone since it is one of the free aircraft that comes with DCS. I choose Client as skill level. This means that the aircraft is to be controlled by a player. I want the plane's group to spawn in the Senaki-Kolki area, so I zoom and pan the map using mouse wheel and right click and drag until I see the area where I want the aircraft to appear. Once I click, the first aircraft of our new group appears, together with the waypoint information of the initial waypoint. To avert accidental waypoint placement, I immediately click on Edit to enter waypoint edit mode. As before, since we are now editing waypoints, let's take stock of the information that is available per waypoint. We start with the current waypoint. It is displayed as waypoint X of Y, and like before, whichever idiot implemented this used two different ways to count waypoints. The currently active waypoint is always at least one less than the total number of waypoints. Except, that is, when we look at the very first waypoint, in which case we get no number at all, because the team at Eagle Dynamics is really not worth their salary. There is no excuse for crap quality, Eagle Dynamics, and with Mission Editor you are delivering crap. So, after not being told which waypoint we are editing, we can name the waypoint. Few people do, but at least it's good to know that we can, I guess. Next is the type control. Yeah, I've ragged on this control a lot already, and now we'll see why. It's really one of the stupidest, brain-dead and user-hostile implementations that I've come across, and yes, you have to be exceptionally inept in application design to bugger something up this badly. Whoever designed this either hated DCS with a vengeance or has no business programming. They managed to put more silly design-breaking choices into this thing than there are controls, and that's saying something. The first major screw-up is that type has different semantics depending on what kind of group you are editing. For ground units, type defines the formation of the group, when it starts moving, but not before. Yeah. For naval groups, it doesn't do anything. It just clutters the interface and highlights the designer's collective ineptitude. And for air groups, well, the intellectually challenged people at Eagle Dynamics managed something special. They managed to mix location with aircraft states, in air or on the ground, hot and cold, and then added some action into the mix, completely breaking that feature. Worse, the available waypoint types change with the waypoint number. There are different options available for the very first waypoint, which is, incidentally, called waypoint 0, and all other waypoints, waypoint 1 or greater. Yeah, this is one of the things that makes creating missions so difficult, and another reason why people think that DCS is of such a crappy quality. Their UX is pure, unadulterated shite. So, we already went over the different types available for the first waypoint in air groups. Location, really bad names, different states, stupid implied actions, and landing, a completely dysfunctional broken option that simply doesn't make sense and only serves to show us how inept the people at ED are when it comes to application design. So yeah, adding routes for the most important type of groups, aircraft, is off to a terrible start. So let's see what we can choose for any waypoint other than the initial one. Similar to the initial point, there are turning point and flyover point. They technically can result in slightly different behavior of the aircraft in the mission. For most content designers, they pretty much are the same, although I do appreciate that DCS makes the distinction here. Then there's landing, something that ties an action to a location without resorting to waypoint actions, screwing up that mechanic for the rest of us. But I'm sure that the low-rent experts at ED thought about that carefully. It often does work for AI aircraft, causing the group to land. Nice. But this only works if that is also the last waypoint in a route. It's the reason why you can't create a group that simply flies patterns, one of the most essential things pilots do. Imagine anyone with a straight face wanting to sell you a flight sim that disallows patterns. And then there is landing reviewer, the type that might as well have been correctly named landing foobar, because it doesn't work. I'm convinced that the people at Eagle Dynamics knew that they were handing out crap, for the relevant passage in the manual incorrectly reads, "This type is available when selecting any waypoint other than 1, by which they mean 0, dumbasses. When set to landing reviewer, the waypoint will snap to the nearest airfield or FARP." In other words, after getting the waypoint's number wrong, even Eagle Dynamics won't tell you what it does. They just flat out wrongly tell you when it's available, nothing else. You know, Eagle Dynamics quality. Now, some people may deduce that this type may be a combination of location and action. Have the aircraft land, then refuel and rearm, and then continue. That is good, solid reasoning and would be helpful in missions. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Then again, Eagle Dynamics can point to the manual and rightly say that they never claimed that it would do that. We simply don't know what this type is supposed to do. In 2019, more than 6 years ago, user J. Dingo wrote an 8-piece article narrowly escaping Eagle Dynamics community censors for suggesting that something was wrong with the landing review R option. Today, end of 2025, more than 6 years later, the bug is still present, unlike J. Dingo, who was last seen at DCS's discussion boards in 2021. So yeah, I would not expect reporting bugs to Eagle Dynamics be helpful nor welcome. Or rather, it hasn't been my experience and we have plenty of circumstantial evidence to the contrary. My thanks to J. Dingo for making a valiant effort, and I hope that they someday return to DCS. And I digress before I'm stroking out. It's just difficult to try and create quality work using this kind of amateur trash. To add insult to injury, Eagle Dynamics claim that this trash is quality and their so-called community managers will penalize customers who say otherwise. Now, back in Mission Editor, I note that thankfully the people at Eagle Dynamics found it in them to remove the idiotic template control for type. Altitude and speed control what you expect. Since most mission designers think in altitude above ground, I strongly recommend that you use the AGL option for altitude, as that makes setting up flights so much more intuitive. Converting between MSL and AGL is a hassle, especially in mountainous regions. I know, as I used to fly in the Alps, and fortunately Mission Editor could take that chore off of you. If the clowns at Eagle Dynamics hadn't screwed up this feature so hard, as we'll see soon. If you're one of the few people who think in Mach rather than kilometers per hour or so-called imperial units, you can set the aircraft speed using that number. Then there are again options to set start time and ETA, which in conjunction with GS and fixed time can be used to synchronize groups and flights. We'll skip those controls here. Alright, turning back to our flight, I now want to add a route. I make sure that the group is selected and I also ensure that we are in add mode. Before we add new waypoints, let's look at the current waypoint, waypoint undefined of 1. Altitude is set to 2000 meters, some 6,500 feet. I prefer to work in altitude above ground, so I changed the control to the right from MSL, mean sea level, to AGL, altitude above ground. Did you notice? Mission Editor silently changes the altitude from 2000 to 1200 meters, which is definitely not 2000 meters AGL. So why did Mission Editor change altitude to 1200 meters? Because that's the maximum radar altitude for some planes in DCS, and Mission Editor's designers have no clue how pilots think. So, okay, the designers are idiots, and I type in 2300 meters to force the issue. As soon as I click anywhere else, Mission Editor again silently changes that number back to 1200. Yeah, I fail to imagine anything worse. I mean, even my Jepson flight deck for the iPad isn't that crappy, and I'm not on friendly terms with that app. How can something that relates to flight be that incompetently made? So, AGL is currently terminally buggered by the incompetent quality at Eagle Dynamics, and mission designers have to manually calculate the height above ground for waypoints above 1200 meters AGL. Yeah, content crafters, screw precision approach planning. Mission Editor wants you to old school it. Why? Eagle Dynamics quality. Remember folks, there are still people who call this a flight sim. So, okay, I'm switching back to MSL, set 2000 meters, and forget about a potentially nice Mission Editor feature. Crap! Speed is set to 650 kilometers per hour, which is a good speed for the Frogfoot. One nice feature of Mission Editor is that for air spawns, it tends to default altitude and speed to values that keep the aircraft safely in the air after spawning. You should not blindly rely on this, but it is my observation that mostly the defaults can be trusted. I now again make sure that I'm in add mode and finally add 3 waypoints by clicking on the map. To change a waypoint's location, Mission Editor has a surprisingly nice feature. Click on Edit to change into Waypoint Edit mode, then click and drag any waypoint and release it wherever you want the new waypoint to be. This is a nice and quite helpful feature. To add waypoints after a waypoint, click the waypoint where you want to add or insert waypoints, click on Add, and then click on the map. Wherever you click, new waypoints are inserted or added to the route. And that, people, is how you add routes for aircraft. The entire interface is riddled with silly, stupid, and sheer incompetent design that makes it so much more difficult, if not impossible, to create high-quality missions. I believe that this is the main reason that DCS has so few good missions, because I know that we have more than enough gifted and competent mission designers. It's the crappy tools that Eagle Dynamics give us that in the end make DCS a crappy game outside of learning a new cockpit. And it makes me terribly apprehensive for the coming dynamic campaign. Because if the same brain trust that made Mission Editor and Quick Action Generator put their fingers on dynamic campaign, it's almost certain to be crap as well. But let's not jump to conclusions. We're here to create great missions despite of Mission Editor's shoddy quality and near fatal flaws. Creating quality missions is almost impossible with trash tools, but I have accepted this as a challenge and occasionally have managed to create missions with moderate popularity, so there is no reason why you can't either. Let's try and stay DCS's decline for a while. I think it's worth a try. So, seeing that I managed to get through this episode without a stroke, let's see if I can't find a more agreeable subject for the next tutorial. Until then, have fun! Creating missions, of course, and take care!